I was conceived in an attack on my mother. A DNA test years later pulled that night back into the light. And what started out as a way to understand my own story uncovered a trail of unsolved cases, secrets, and people still waiting for answers.
Walking proof.
Shampa and PJ.
Walking proof.
Tell me what you know. Shampa PJ. Take me down that road.
Walking proof.
Truth in the dark. Oh, tell me now.
Walking proof.
Leave a mark.
Welcome to Walking Proof.
A true crime podcast with PJ and Shampal, a podcast where true crime meets family history and nothing stays buried. I'm Joseph Bales, also known as PJ.
And I'm his husband, Shannon Bales, also known as Shanpaul. We want to invite you into this community. Here we're going to explore true crimes, mostly from the 70s and 80s. We'll sprinkle a little late 60s and some 90s in there.
Yeah, and there'll be a heavy focus on Houston, Texas, and the surrounding areas. Today we are going to be here just dropping an introductory trailer for our new podcast, Walking Proof. It's a true crime podcast with PJ and Shampal, which will begin airing on Thursday, July 2nd. So, Shannon, what makes this podcast different?
So what makes this podcast, out of all the podcasts out there? Well, for starters, we are two husbands. So you've got two older men
Did you just say older?
I did. So we're two older married men talking about true crime.
So you don't hear that just every day, right?
No, and we're not just husbands. And the reason that I use the word older is because we're also grandparents, grandfathers.
Sure, yes, we are. We have two adult children, a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law. And it was when the grandchildren came along that we inherited our names. I was Papa Joe, which obviously got shortened to PJ. And then Shannon,
I became Shanpaul.
So Shampal, go ahead. Tell everyone about the grandchildren.
Okay. So we have 5 grandchildren. We also have the fiance to our oldest granddaughter. So technically 6 grandchildren. As often as we can, we are in Southeast Texas, Southwest Louisiana, so that we can spend as much time with them as we can.
Exactly. And we're more than just two granddads talking about crime, wouldn't you say?
I would say that's a fair statement. I want to circle back because I just thought of something. When you asked me what makes this podcast different, I think the most unique thing about this is going to be the lens in which I did my research, the lens that I'm telling this story through.
You know, your life is actually connected to a true crime.
Right. Yeah, I am walking proof.
Yes, you are. You were conceived as a result of an extremely violent crime in October of 1978.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I didn't learn that truth until 2009. It was a Christmas gift that opened up, this whole Pandora's box that I just couldn't close. And that was long before genetic genealogy was on the scene, solving cold cases that you see on TV, like the Golden State Killer.
Okay. So don't give it all away yet.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's why we work. So those of you who may know us on a personal level, if you've ever heard us interact, what just happened there is pretty standard on how I want to jump straight to the punchline. I want to skip the small talk. I want to tell you, but then you really have to hear the before, as Joe does so well, lays a foundation. So thank you for keeping me grounded.
I have to build that foundation,
right?
Of course.
But I will say this, every case that I've researched, through the 70s and 80s in Houston, I wasn't just some guy that was into true crime. I was truly searching, trying to figure out who my biological father was.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That was the whole precipice behind this whole event, was finding out who you thought it was. But let's talk about the podcast for a minute. So,
Okay.
do you think that this podcast is so much bigger than just your personal story?
Oh, so much bigger. My personal story that's just the beginning. We're going to start with some of the stories that's connected to my book that I've already written about, which does include my biological mother's attack. But it was those attacks, the questions, the search that changed my life. So after we kind of talk about some of those, then we'll take a step back.
Yeah. Is that where we're going to take a step back and look into many more cases that actually did not make it into the book?
Right. Because, earlier I said the lens in which I did my research, I would start digging and I was looking into my mother's case and the rabbit trails, it just was one after the other. I would look at crimes that matched my mother's attack. Women that were abducted, assaulted, murdered, same general area. And sometimes the crime scenes were just next door to each other practically. And then I would look at the suspects that were involved. I'd look at where they lived. And then I'd look into the families of the victims and the families of the suspects and find other parallels. And one case led to another that led to another. And before long, I wasn't just researching one story. I was staring into an entire world of cold cases from Houston in the 70s and 80s. Some connected, maybe some didn't, but every page, every story led somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, you spent more than 16 years following those trails.
Yeah.
And running down those rabbit trails equated really into thousands of hours of research.
Yeah.
Digging into cold cases. There was so many newspaper archives that you looked into, and
Right.
looking at police reports, visiting police stations and sheriff's offices and talking to detectives, getting stories from families, and then getting the court documents and the court reports and the court records and actually digging through those. You did think a lot of these cases might be connected, and some were. Many you eventually just ruled out they weren't connected. The point is, you never stop searching. You never let these stories go.
Right. Yeah. You talked about newspaper archives. And I remember one point, especially in the beginning, I would, Ancestry, you can see death certificates from Texas in the 70s. So I just searched all death certificates with no names in 1978 and, just started reverse engineering, figuring out, were any of the addresses and were any of these cases suspicious. And so a lot of these stories have never been told, maybe a little brief mention in a newspaper article, maybe a little attention back then, but long before social media and podcasts like this could give them a voice. So the stories were important, the victims, the families, and I guess what I'm hoping is maybe that by talking about them, we can bring answers. Maybe somebody remembers something. Maybe they were afraid to speak up back then, but enough years have passed that they can now. And if not, just making sure that these people are not forgotten.
Absolutely. Because, as you've said before, these stories deserve to be told.
Yeah.
And, this podcast is going to be part true crime, and it's going to be part investigation,
Right.
as well as part your personal journey. And, Shannon, I do want to say what a journey this has been. Over 16 years of research. And then you published your book recently, Walking Proof, which is available on Amazon.
Go buy it now.
Absolutely. And now we've talked about a podcast. We've actually talked about a podcast for a long time. We've talked about a podcast of even a different genres than this one.
Yeah.
But, this is the one that really feels exactly right. So here we are.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. I have a question for you. You've done so much research, you've looked into so many cases, and out of all those investigations and rabbit trails that you ran down and the cases that you looked into, which one stays with you the most? Is there like one that just hangs on to you, one that you just can't let go?
There are a lot of them that I cannot let go, but when we were going over all the different ones, the one that that really means something to me, and from personal connections, the similarity to my mother's, that's going to be our very first episode, our pilot episode. So to give you a little insight on how I stumbled on that one, the lens that I was telling you guys about earlier, in October of 1978, while I was researching my mother's attack, I did find another case, a woman abducted less than a mile away, just weeks apart from my mother's attack. The similarities were too strong to ignore. Her name was Gail Ann Cater.
Episode 1, Who Killed Gail Ann Cater? So we invite you all along on this journey as we look into Gail's case, and then so many more after that.
So follow us, Walking Proof, a true crime podcast with PJ and Shan Paul, wherever you listen to your podcast. And please make sure you catch that very first episode of Who Killed Gail Ann Cater.
Absolutely. And make sure you follow us on social media, Walking Proof, a true crime podcast with PJ and Shan Paul. We'll be sharing updates there, photos, research, some behind-the-scenes pieces of the investigations.
Yeah, because this has been a journey. We're now bringing you guys along with us, but it's only the beginning, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the very first episode when it drops.
Yes, and that is going to be on Thursday, July the 2nd. So we'll see you there.
All right, we'll see you then.